I was lucky that my native tradition, native culture had wonderful translators of French classic literature. And when I was very young, I was able to read in translation Montaigne, Michel de Montaigne's essays, very famous book, many volumes, 3 volumes, many essays inside. And I want to talk about that because this book is very important to me. I got from this book a couple of ideas that shaped my life later on, and one of them was humanism, the other one was interest in culture, and the third one was how to perform culture or how to do cultural things in a sense. So Michel de Montaigne, or Michael de Montaigne, lived in the 16th century. The book was composed at the end of the 16th century, and it was a wonderful way of showing the role of writing essays or writing texts, not in order to convince somebody, not in order to earn money, not in order to be famous, but rather to see and interpret the world by means of your own words, by confronting different things in the world and giving it its, your own flavor, as if. At the same time, it was the work that, this intellectual work, maybe cultural work, that was very much interested in comparing different aspects in the name of what is true, rather than cultivating my own opinions. So although he was writing things from as if himself, I wouldn't say he was egocentric or that his individualism was self-centered. Just the opposite. He was interested in his views, his opinions, but he appreciated the greatness, the vastness of the world and many things around. So he tried to show as if a balanced way to show his place in the world. Understanding or trying to understand and appreciate different cultures, different standpoints, different views. And so it was not, narcissistic or something like that. It was rather something that is important nowadays, and what we call cultural studies maybe, but cultural studies in the sense of studying different cultures and trying to understand, this is very important, trying to understand different cultures, or people coming from different cultures, rather than imposing upon them my own culture. Montaigne represents something that we call Renaissance humanism. Renaissance humanism was a part of cultural history of our Western tradition that referred to Greek and Roman sources, especially philosophy and literature. And it was interesting because he wanted to learn languages, Greek, Latin, and so on, and he wanted to learn the languages, not just to learn languages, but to learn other cultures and maybe compare, but also to enrich his own culture. So this humanism, the term humanism, means that that we focus on the individual lot, the individual place of human being, rather than see the human being by the lens of society or group of people. So perhaps for the first time in Western history, or Western intellectual history, or Western cultural history, we have a very strong evidence that an individual has power, has sense, has meaning, and his or her efforts should be to enrich this life. It was not a religious stance too much. So the Renaissance humanist tradition recognized this life rather than life, in heaven or something like that. That's why they focused upon the variety of the life nowadays. I don't know if nowadays this phrase Renaissance person functions, but when I was younger, this phrase functioned, and it referred to 20th century situation. Renaissance person means that you have a person who is interested in very many things, who has many hobbies, who wants to learn many languages, but not in business. It is not a business model. It is a model to enrich your life, to live a high quality life, but not high quality meaning economically high quality, but intellectually, culturally, maybe spiritually. So such a person, for example, would learn a foreign language because such a person would like to understand the language, the culture of this language more. Or the other example, such a person would travel, but not to travel like, tourists nowadays travel mainly, some of them at least, to take photos, to send to a Facebook page and so on, but rather travel to learn the customs of different cultures. Or still other example, such a person would have many hobbies, not because of some superficial type of learning everything, but rather to, I don't know, to digest, maybe it's not a good word, but to consume, I don't know if it's a good word, but to cultivate different arts, different ways of looking at world. So all this in kind of conviction that life nowadays, at least in countries where there is no war, there is no hunger, things like that, we have so many wonderful things around, so many interesting people around, so many interesting cultures around, also so many interesting traditions in the past, that it is really exciting to learn these things. And I repeat, it is not because you want to make a business model out of this. It is rather to do something that this classical Ciceronian type of culture recommends, that is, cultivate your mind. As you know, the first meaning of culture, the word culture, meant cultivation of the field. In Roman time, culture started to mean cultivation of your mind. And this is here, this type of culture, that you cultivate your mind, but not just cultivate your mind just to cultivate your mind, but rather to enrich your life. This Ciceronian type of culture, it is not the only type of culture that we should talk about. In Montaigne, we have different type of cultures. I mean, different type of meanings of this word. So culture in the first instance here is, cultivation of your mind. So you are not just exposing your individuality, but rather you are humble and you are open and you are interested and you want to enrich yourself and you want to, perhaps by your knowledge, by your thoughts, you want to enrich other people. But first of all, you are as if behind all these things that happen around and you want to do something good with this. So this is the one type of culture that Montaigne is as if performs, and something that I like. But the other I also like, culture here is, and we use this, the meaning of this term as well. Culture means that it is established way, more or less established way of living of different group of people. So, for example, we say French culture, or we say Chinese culture, or we say contemporary culture, or we say Western culture. So this term is completely different, although the word is the same, culture. So we should, I think, be very careful when we are thinking about that. So this other meaning of culture is both present here in the book and also in our daily life. So when I say culture in the second meaning, I mean a sort of reference to established way or established tradition, for example, in which I was born, educated, and so on. Nowadays is very important because for many people, nowadays and in the past, I think, culture in the second sense gave and gives now something that we call more or less identity. So that's why it is important. So for many people, their own identities are taken from the tradition they have been brought in, and the language they speak, or the customs they have, maybe the gods they cherish, the points of reference they want to cultivate, the people around. So in this meaning, culture functions here and nowadays, and it is the second meaning. The third meaning, also here, present here, and also very popular nowadays, is something that maybe we would call today cultural studies. So it is sort of, I don't know, kind of science or academic discipline, or perhaps a kind of reflection about maybe comparing and trying to understand different cultures. So it is very similar to ethnography, for example, or cultural anthropology, when you study in a bit more profound way the behaviors, the customs, the norms, social norms in that society, and perhaps you want to compare that if that society cultivates something and we cultivate our society, cultivate something different, who is right, perhaps, because we can describe those traditions and ours. It's okay, cultural studies as a discipline does it, but we may try to conclude whose traditions perhaps are more important and perhaps less important. And here we come to something that nowadays is hugely important. And maybe Montaigne started that discussion. Something that we call today cultural relativism. At that time, they did not use that term, but they discussed about that. So when you have different cultures, different ways or established ways, traditional ways of doing things, when you compare them, there is a problem. What is the outcome? I mean, you can compare different cultures, but one of the reasons you do it is one of the reasons to know who's right, who's wrong, what is the best option. So if we do that, we have to face the question: are cultures, different cultures, maybe all cultures, equal, or they are doing things in their own way, but it's okay? Or perhaps some cultures are less developed in some areas, more developed. We most probably we will not have problems with technological development when we compare this culture, that culture, and the level of technological development, medical development, economic development, and so on and so on. But as far as morality is concerned, or social structure is concerned, or power structure in the society is concerned, this is a tricky thing. And at that time, people like Montaigne were thinking about that because, of course, it was the time just after the discovery of America and other continents, other lands. So it was for the people who were thinking about the human condition, human lot, what is humanity, and so on, what is the status of different cultures, it was, terribly difficult problem. Are the cultures of those lands, of those people and those peoples, are those cultures equal to ours? And for example, in America, I don't know, elsewhere, and it was, a problem for generations at the time. The conventional I would say, approach was, of course, our culture is better because we are Christians, so our culture has recognized the true God, it is truth. We are Western culture, meaning we have, Greek philosophers, we have Roman literature, we have, technology and so on. So we are superior, we are higher than cultures over there. But Montaigne was one of the guys who said, wait a second, we are technologically better because we can construct the ships that could transport us, to America, for example. But what about our superiority or moral superiority when we kill, innocent people over there for as a kind of our expansion, our, how to say that? Is it morally better? Are we morally better than those whom we kill on massive scale? So he was one of the first who articulated the problem. It was pretty shocking, as far as I know, at that time that somebody, and it was not just anybody, it was a very prestigious guy. I mean, his, I would say, status in the then world was really prestigious. He was a very famous person. And he, by his writing, he was trying to show that we, at some aspects, and very important aspects like morality, we are not better, we are corrupt. Because in the name of power, in the name of taking land, we could, without any problem, kill thousands of people. They're often innocent people. So where is the superiority? And at the same time, we are Christians. I mean, guys who are telling everybody that we have morality and we do things in the name of God. Come on. So it was a good example, or perhaps a good introduction into something that we can call a cultural relativism, that is situation or reflection that asks questions about that. So if we say that cultures are more or less equal, for example, morally equal, or from the point of view of social structure, if they are equal, what does it mean in a situation when they are very different? So what is the measure or criterion by means of which we measure this equality or this inequality? Who gives this measure? Who offers that? Because obviously, when we measure something, so a part of the success of the measurement is who provides the measurement, So if we provide the measure or the way of evaluation of things, so we do it according to our criteria. So when we assess or evaluate other cultures, usually we do it in the name of our culture. So we give the tools of our culture to measure our culture, other cultures. For Montaigne, it's risky. For Montaigne, it is not fair. Because why should we, the people from our culture, why should we have the final say about who's going to measure and what? Perhaps those nations should be given the right to measure us according to their criteria. And then the outcome would be very different. An example would be cannibalism. That, in the Christian tradition, you have to, when you have dead parents, you know what to do. You have the whole set of rituals to do what you should do. For us, it's obvious. But when you meet, and this is Montaigne who wrote chapter or essay about cannibalism, but when you have other cultures that respect their parents when they die, they respect their parents by trying to possess a physical part of the parent by eating it. How would you compare? According to our standards, it is, barbarity, it is terrible, it is awful, it is strange. However, if you look, maybe if you ask them, perhaps they would say, well, this is our way to respect our parents, that we want to incorporate maybe, or to be, I don't know, physically to do something to possess them forever when we live. So we are not separate anymore. But anyway, it is our established way of respecting our parents. It is not your Christian way of respecting our parents, but it is our way of respecting parents. Another example, contemporary one, about this cultural relativism refers to what I mentioned before. I mentioned discovery of America. Well, discovery, it's a good term for us, the people from Europe. But what about the Native Americans? What about the First Nations, as in Canada they call it the First Nations? What about the people who always were there? And they would say, you discovered us? Well, we have been here all the time. You invaded us. You colonized us. You killed many people who have been living here for forever, and you claim you have discovered us, you have given civilization, and so on. So this would be another example of this problem, relativity of cultures, because cultural relativism also means the language you use. I don't mean Spanish, English, but language like this. Discovery of America or invasion of America. If we try to develop this comparison or this relativism issue into more contemporary things, it would be very easy to compare, for example, the role of women in society. Especially that there is a big discussion in Western societies, and I think elsewhere, about the role of women. And now it's difficult for me to tell what is Western, right? Because we have so many versions of Western culture. But let's say in Western culture, we have really very fast and very definite emancipation of women. Maybe for recent 40 years, since 1960s, 1970s, in Western Europe, in Northern America, we have had this evolution where women are more and more independent, and they can decide if they want to have families or not, to have a boyfriend or not, to have a husband or not, to have babies or not. So they can decide. And if we compare this to other cultures, I don't know, Muslim culture, Chinese culture, I don't know, African culture, and different versions of this, we ask a similar question as far as cultural relativism is concerned. So if we, the people from the West, say, wait a second, this is the social justice thing to have emancipated women who can decide. And we may say, it is true because it's obvious, right? But if you ask some representatives of other cultures, more traditional cultures, they would say, come on, our traditions say that the role of women is definite. I mean, house, maybe kitchen, children, husband, all this stuff. And what, they would say, what you, people from the West, what right do you have? Moral right? Legal right? What? To tell us what to do when we do not want it. And obviously, I'm not talking about males, I'm talking about females. Maybe, it is difficult for me to discuss that, but very many females in traditional cultures find themselves fully realized in this traditional model. So This would be an example that is more contemporary and more, I would say, more popular for discussion. The role of women. We can say the role of women in Western societies, in Western Europe, in Northern America, okay. But what about the rest? Should they follow us in the process of emancipation of women? And if we say, yeah, you should follow us, what are the reasons to tell them that they should follow us? Do we have any suggestion what to do in this cultural relativism, or maybe some other people would say cultural diversity, when maybe cultural relativism maybe should not be discussed because it is difficult to find out a good solution? Maybe diversity, cultural diversity or cultural pluralism or plurality, maybe these are better terms. Do we have any suggestion from Montaigne what to do? I think we can have one. He would say that all organisms, all living organisms, meaning humans and animals, we have biologically similar structure, which means that we have similar basic needs. And satisfaction of these basic needs is the first step. Everybody needs to eat. Everybody needs to drink. Everybody needs to have shelter in case of, weather and so on. Everybody needs to love. And everybody needs to have pleasures. And this is the second part of his answer. So biological or natural equipment, one thing, but we have something else, which is a part of biological or natural equipment. He was at least partially a kind of hedonist. He said that pleasure is the best thing for everybody we can get. So aiming at pleasure is something that everybody do it. So perhaps his way out would be that independently of these differences amongst cultures, relativism or not, whatever, we are similar because everybody needs to be happy, to have pleasures, long distance, short distance pleasures, and everybody should be given the opportunity to realize these pleasures, at least at basic level. It does not have to be, very, sophisticated or something, at least the basic level. So members of all cultures should be given this opportunity to live happy lives, at least at basic level.